Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about episode 14 of season 3 of The Walking Dead called Prey. Overall, I thought this was a reasonably good episode, but not quite the mind-blowing extravaganza that some folks out there for whatever reason have been making this episode out to be. Now again, I'm not saying that this is a bad episode, I'm just saying it really isn't some kind of be-all, end-all, and I'm a little confused by the raving that's going on in some corners. But you know, everybody's got their own opinion on things, so just let's kind of get right into it. I was kind of surprised to see this episode start off with a flashback to the days when Michonne and Andrea were roaming around. But what really surprised me about that scene was the way that Michonne says that the zombies that she had co-opted, tamed, whatever you want to call it, weren't even human to begin with, or weren't even human before they were turned into zombies. This is a pretty intriguing statement if you're familiar with the comics. You know the identity of the two zombies. So let's just say that this seems to be a major difference in regards to Michonne's attitudes to who the zombies were in the comics. Apart from that, I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. But it's also kind of surprising that they would actually go back to this particular thing. I know when Michonne first showed up, a lot of people were wondering, well, just who were those two zombies? So, we never did really get an answer to that. So it is interesting that they decided to take now of all times to go and touch on that. But anyway, let's see. We also get to see the governor setting up his torture chamber. Now again, if like me you're familiar with the comics, you know some seriously bad stuff goes down in the governor's little private funhouse. And again, I'm not really going to say anything about that. I don't want to spoil anything. But I will say that there have only been a few times when I've read comics where I've read something that was so completely and utterly screwed up, I felt really kind of nauseous just walking away from the comic book. Some of the stuff that goes down in that little fun room is among that. And I'm not kidding, folks. I can count the number of times that's happened for me reading something in a comic on one hand and still have fingers to spare. I think the number's at maybe 3. Yeah. So if they go there with some during the next 2 episodes, that's going to be some seriously hardcore messed up TV. All right, and we're gonna leave it at that. Although I gotta say, when Andrea was up there trying to shoot the governor, am I the only one who's thinking like there is no way in the world she's gonna make that shot? One, Andrea is at best trained with mostly with shooting as a sniper, right, with a rifle. Now, granted, she's pretty close to the guy, and the governor is completely unaware of her, just despite the fact that all he has to do is really glance up to see her. But, yeah, I just have the feeling that Andrea is not going to make that shot. I think it's a little bit harder to snipe somebody with a pistol than the show seemed to be making it out to be, but I'm not really a gun expert. And, well, let's face it here. If Andrea didn't have the guts to kill the governor before, her doing it now seems kind of unlikely. I mean, she sure didn't put up any real resistance when Milton stepped in to stop her. And that brings us to Milton. He's a character who's really, for the most part, just sort of been percolating in the background. And for the most part, he's just sort of seemed like, at best, the governor's pet geek, or someone who was just hopelessly naive about the way that zombies worked. Here, Milton is really kind of stepping up. I mean, he's the guy who he stops Andrea from killing the governor. He goes out there and he destroys the pit, well, the zombies in the pit, or mostly destroys them. He destroys that one trailer that had a bunch full of zombies, and he wasn't really... Either he was really, really oblivious to the fact that the governor knew what he was up to, or at that point he just didn't really care. But he was, standing toe-to-toe with the governor and the governor knows that he did all that. And Milton doesn't blink. Which, I mean, considering how he was not that long ago, even when he and Andrea ran into Tyrese's group, he was still sort of like about being outside of Woodbury. Here, Milton's really changed. He's found a spine, and I know some people are confused as like, well, why didn't Milton go with the prison? He'd be better off with Rick's group. Well, let's keep in mind he only really has Andrea's word for about how Rick's group are, and well, they did come into his hometown, his adopted hometown, and shoot and kill a bunch of people. So I think he might have realized that Andrea is perhaps painting a somewhat less than neutral perspective, has a somewhat less than neutral perspective on Rick's group. But more than anything, I think it's just that Milton, as he even said, he's not really a guy who's cut it out to survive in the post-apocalypse zombie world. I think Milton has really resigned himself to the idea that whatever his fate is, if he's going to go down killed by zombies, if he's going to get killed by the governor, if he's going to somehow make it through to a better tomorrow, it's all going to happen in Woodbury. If he tries to leave, I think he's realized that he's not going to get very far if he tries to leave Woodbury. It is as I said. I feel that Milton believes his fate is tied to Woodbury one way or the other, and that he's resigned himself to that. That's really all I have to say about Milton. So I guess we might, let's finish up on talking about Andrea, since she's been the subject of conversation here. Now, I know a lot of people over the course of this season have really been ragging pretty hard on Andrea, and I admit, for the most part, I've been one of them. Again, mostly just due to my disappointment with how she's really just not measuring up to how cool and awesome Andrea in the comics was. Now, one of my friends who's also following the show was really pumped and going like, take that, Andrea haters, in regards to what happened this episode. And as much as I hate to rain on my friend's parade, I can't really agree with her on that one. Andrea's moment of awesome that everybody seems to be all excited about was her opening a door and then hiding behind it. Now, granted, this turned a whole bunch of zombies loose on the governor. It seems like even he had a pretty close shave there. But again, it was just dumb luck that Andrea stumbled across a stairwell full of walkers, and again, all she did was open a door and hide behind it for a few seconds, and then run. Pretty much everything else that she tried to do this episode, she failed at. I mean, if Tyrese and Sasha hadn't backed down, she wouldn't have even gotten out of Woodbury. So, yeah. And then, she also lets Milton stop her from at least trying to kill the governor, and gets caught by the governor again, and I don't really think there's much going on. I don't think I need to keep going down this road. I think my point has indeed been made. Now, I'm not really happy about this. I really, really genuinely do want Andrea to be a cool character that I like, that I look forward to seeing, like it is when I'm reading the comics, but this is the main aspect of the show that continues to let me down, and it really does sadden me. Before we move on, let's finish things up with let's go talk into let's pause for a second. Okay, hopefully that wasn't too loud. Alright, now that I've had a moment to regain my train of thought, let's talk about the governor. Now, I do like how when he has that conversation with Milton, he says to him, you believe that there's still some sort of a spark of who they were inside the walkers. And of course Milton says yes. So that means that the governor feels justified in wanting to kill Michonne because he feels that she basically killed his daughter Penny. And you have to think that maybe there is some small part of the governor that believes that. Maybe it's that part of the governor that Milton thinks is still Phil. But really, more than anything, is just pure hatred and revenge. Now, granted, the governor, does have pretty good reason to be angry at Michonne. She did stab him in the eye. But still, it just really shows here that the governor really is just a beast of a man. He's got this little air of being a civil, nice guy, but underneath it all, he's just as much of a monster as any walker or thing shambling around out there in the woods. And even people have even kind of pointed out that this is basically become, in regards to Michonne, he's basically become Captain Ahab and she's Moby Dick. And honestly, I don't really have a problem with that. I think it's just another step in what will ultimately be the resolution. I mean, here we really have seen the governor presented as this incredibly formidable guy. He's always got a plan. He's pretty much able to talk and lie his way out of almost anything, or at least present a passable cover story. But giving him that white whale, well, that creates ye ol' Achilles heel. And let's face it, Rick's going to need something like that in regards to the governor if he's going to get out of this alive. And let's see. Oh yeah, almost forgot. We need to talk about Tyrese. The conflict between him and Alan, I don't know, that just really kind of feels sort of tacked on there. I mean, I'm not really terribly concerned about anything that's going on with Alan and Ben. Frankly, they just both seem to be dicks. But it was pretty cool seeing Tyrese have the chance to dangle Alan over that pit full of walkers. And, to his credit, Alan at least had the guts to dare Tyrese to kill him. And, of course, Tyrese being an upstanding and genuinely decent guy, he doesn't. And I also like how they showed that, as cool a character as he is, Tyrese certainly does have some flaws. For example, him being an absolutely terrible marksman. Tyrese is a guy who works best up close and personal when it comes to walkers, clearly. And again, we also see examples of him, coming into conflict with the governor. He takes a firm stand when he thinks, when he figures out what the governor's plan is. There is no thinks. The governor just lies to him. Tyrese really does understand what's going on. And he is a guy who's willing to step up and say, no, that's wrong. I'm not going to be a part of this. So it really does make me wonder exactly what Tyrese's role in this is all is going to be in the future. And I can't help but think that when the governor goes down, because let's face it, it's inevitable, Tyrese would be a much better choice for somebody to be the leader of Woodbury. I mean, that's just an idea I'm kind of throwing out there, but it's something I genuinely think. Let me see here. Oh yeah, let's actually talk about that scene at the warehouse, since that was, not without its flaws, still a pretty cool scene. I really liked, the governor going around with that eerie whistle. Reminded me of something I saw on an episode, I think it was Ray Bradbury Theater. Some really creepy episode involving a serial killer. I really wish I could remember the details, but that the serial killer hiding in the shadows, just cheerily whistling a tune as he hunts down his victim. That was pretty cool. Now, I know some people were trying to figure out why it is the governor was going around smashing glass. Some people were like, well, was he just angry? Was this some part of a plan? At the time I was watching the episode, I thought he might have been trying to, get a bunch of glass on the floor, so if Andrea was moving around in that area, or walkers were, he'd be able to hear it go crunch, crunch. But honestly, now that I've had some more time to think it over, it really could have just been he was trying to freak Andrea out, or he was just mad, or maybe I was right and he just had a plan there. I honestly don't know. But one thing I do want to say about the stuff in the warehouse is if you're paying attention carefully, there's some really intense and really cool music that plays there that really amps up the horror of that scene. Let's see. Yes. I also wanted to talk about briefly that scene back at the zombie pit, where Shump, that's the other black dude, goes over there. He discovers it, and there's the walkers still hanging out in the pit all together, just still at him. Now, I gotta admit, that was a pretty cool scene. I mean, that was like, whoa, scary and messed up. I'm not really sure how realistic that is. I mean, if you're covered in gasoline and on fire, I'm pretty sure that one of the things that happens to you, PDQ, is that your eyes basically pop and melt. And geez, how hot do you zombies have to get before their brain just, from being on fire, before their brain like melts or something? I honestly don't know, but it was certainly something that was going through my mind while I was watching that. And also, I really briefly want to come back to the idea of whether or not Milton was right, and there is still something of the old Phil in there. Now, I said that I think his desire to kind of get revenge on Michonne for killing Penny might have been a sign of that. And I still believe that that might be true. But I'm also kind of wondering, aside from that, is there anything else of the old Phil in there? Is there anything of the once supposedly decent man in there? And I'll say this. I suppose I shouldn't. I suppose I shouldn't have put in that suppose. I kind of take it as a fact that before all this, the governor probably was a decent guy. He's meant to be that evil reflection of Rick. The good person who became a monster. What potentially could have become of Rick. So I can't help but wonder if we might not see that, because things like this, they don't get brought up without reason. But I also think that if there was some sort of moment at the end where it's game over and the governor's dying or something like that, and at the end he shows some little spark of the person that he was, I don't know. I mean, that's such a cliche. At this point, I think that if they're going to kill him off, I'd really rather him just die the evil, horrible bastard that he is, rather than get some sort of quote-unquote redeeming moment. But anyway, folks, there are 2 episodes left before this season wraps up. I'm sure plenty of folks are going to die horribly in the meantime, so let's all look forward to that. And with that said, folks, we're going to wrap it up here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And you can, of course, follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.